All right, so we're here with Ryan Greene, a Democrat running for the U.S. House of Representatives. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Glad to have you. I'm Brian Martin. I'm the managing editor here at the Wyoming Tribune Eagle.
Bob Feck, Cheyenne Animal Shelter.
Ryan Greene candidate.
Yeah, good to have you here, Ryan. What specific issues or concerns caused you to run for Congress this year?
Basically, the two issues that are driving my campaign, the major two issues, is Wyoming's economy and public lands. And those are the top two issues that are driving my campaign.
Could you give us a little follow-up on public lands?
Absolutely. Public lands this is such a huge issue for me, and many in Wyoming is the transfer, this motion to transfer the land back to the state. And I oppose that, definitely. I'm the only candidate that I know of that is for keeping it under federal stewardship. And the reason is there's more about this issue than what is at the surface. Because this issue, when we talk about the lands transferring to the state, we have to understand that if this happens, we are liable for these lands. We're liable for the cost and the maintenance, the staff, and to put out wildfires. The U.S. Wildfire Service, U.S. Forest Service, they sometimes spend more money putting out wildfires than Wyoming does in our entire police force. And so we can't afford this, right? We went through a $680 million budget shortfall in February. Our governor just released a statement this week that we were going to cut another $260 million and 700 layoffs. So we can't afford to maintain this land. We can't. And if we can't afford it, we sell it, and we sell it to private developers and essentially flip our hunting grounds for private homes. So I want to keep the system that has worked since 1890 and keep public lands in public hands. It's a big issue for Wyoming. Republicans and Democrats, the majority of us agree that we want it to stay under federal stewardship. And as a member of Congress, I'll fight for that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Ryan, what qualifications do you bring to the table that will help you serve in Congress?
Well, the typical qualifications, I believe, aren't working in Congress. They've got a 13% approval rating, which is pretty high because normally it's down in the single digits. So the typical qualifications, I don't believe, are what the people are looking for. Our 18 years in Wyoming's energy industry, firsthand experience. I'm a welder by trade. Our family owns a energy service company. And so we provide services, labor and equipment that we service the energy industries that drive this state. We service the coal and trona mines, the natural gas fields, the renewable sector, and also the fertilizer plants. We work with all of Wyoming's energy industry. So what I bring to this to the table is a firsthand experience in the industries that drive this state. And I think that's important, especially with what's going on in the energy industry. A lot of these candidates, I got to hand it to them. I think it's commendable to go out and visit the mines and tour the oil fields and things like that. But, they're not campaign stops for me. These are customers. And so, I understand it from a working perspective, not a visitor perspective.
Ryan, what do you believe is the biggest challenge facing the nation right now? And once you've identified that largest challenge, what are one or two others?
The nation?
Mm-hmm.
I believe the biggest threat facing the nation is our debt. And I believe that that is something that Al Simpson said this is a predictable tragedy. So, and I agree with him on that. So I think this is something that has to be a critical piece to our next Congress. We have to take a look at this and find a way to get it under control and to start working at it. And, there's no vision in this country if we can't pay for it. And so I believe this is the biggest issue that we face.
One or two other big issues that the country faces?
Well, I've never seen a country as divided as it is right now. And I believe, there's this notion that you're either way over here on this camp or way over here on this camp. And I believe the solutions are in the middle. And we've kind of, as a Congress and country, we've lost our ability to communicate, and we've lost our ability to come to some consensus and work together. And I think this is a tragedy in all areas, because there's a lot that Congress needs to do. You hear the term, Congress is broken all the time. And when they talk about solutions or, moving forward, it's still finger pointing and blaming. And I think, this is because it affects so many different issues. If we don't have a Congress that functions, then we're never going to get anything done for the people. And there's people that are hurting, that are out of work, that are facing poverty. And so we look to our leaders to take these challenges and work together for the people. And it just seems like the agenda that they have is different. It's, playing up to the party politics or to the lobbyists. And I think that's a major issue.
Leads into the next question, which is about how would you work across party lines to actually get something done? How do you break that gridlock, and how do you fix that broken system?
No, that's a great question. In fact, I get this question everywhere, and I believe I am the only candidate in this race that can do that. In the field, we work together with Republicans, Democrats, Independents to get the job done. In the morning, we sit down and we have it's called a job safety analysis. We sit down and we plan our day out. And that day includes, the action items that we're going to take. But there's an end result there that we want to get to and we want to achieve. And I've made no secret of the fact that I will work with Republicans. I'll work with Democrats, and I'll also challenge my own party if it doesn't represent the people of Wyoming. And so, and it doesn't matter who's in the White House. I'll work with whoever. But the first step is to have Wyoming in the conversations. That's where it needs to start. I believe when we send people out there that won't work with half of Congress, then Wyoming is left out of the conversations.
How important is it for you to maintain your own voice and your own priorities when you get to DC, rather than just voting the way your party leaders want you to vote?
Well, this is easy for me. I'm a moral person. I'm a person of integrity. I have no lobbyists waiting for me in DC. In fact, I know no one in DC. So I don't have a network built up that's relying on me to vote a certain way. My obligation would be to the voters of Wyoming and to stay true to our values. I know the people of Wyoming. I know what we want, and it's not as simple as we want, everything in this camp and everything in that camp. We want gun rights in Wyoming, but we also want Medicaid. We want to sell coal in Wyoming, but we want public lands to stay public. So I think the solutions have to be found in the middle, and you've got to stay true to who you are and honor, integrity and not just party lines. We have candidates in this race that have proven that they will vote party line, even if it damages the state of Wyoming.
After you've been in Washington for a little bit, how do you maintain that perspective? There's, people will talk about Potomac fever and getting to DC and getting caught up in that system. How would you avoid that and stay true to what you just said?
Yeah, prayer. Yeah. No, I mean, I've never been there, so to experience that, I can't say that, exactly how I would do it, but I run a small business, and we're faced with challenges every day. We're faced with customer complaints and customer satisfaction and, maintaining integrity. And a lot of times you're challenged with your beliefs to do things that may not, particularly serve the company well or not. And I feel that I've been true to who I am and the beliefs that I hold when making those decisions. I may not be the most popular person in Washington, but I'm not doing it to get on Fox News. I've got two kids and two little kids that are here in Wyoming. I've got a 10-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter, and I want them to have and experience Wyoming the way I have. It's a wonderful place, but I don't want them to have to leave the state to find a job. I don't want this boom and bust cycle that we've had since I've been alive. And so I think when you go back there, you have to have the mission already lined out of what your objectives are and follow through and stay true to those values.
you just mentioned the boom and the bust cycle. And right now we're seeing a pretty big downturn in coal production. So do you have any thoughts on addressing that?
Yeah, of course I support coal. I mean, I'm the only one that has any firsthand industry experience in this race. So, coal butters my bread. I support all of Wyoming's energy industry, and will continue to do so in Congress. Now, that we've got to follow the market. We can't just understand that, when we look at coal, we've got to understand that coal and natural gas are competitors. But coal's not going anywhere. It powers a third of our nation, and natural gas powers another third. So for the first time, coal has to compete in the marketplace. And unfortunately, I mean, there are losers and winners. Now, I would support coal, natural gas, and all of Wyoming's energy industries. But when we look at this, the market, we have to understand where it's going. And to do that, we've got to take a look at, because we have to understand, you hear things like regulations a lot and, blaming this administration and the president for these regulations they're calling it the war on coal. And I just don't believe that. And there's other forces at work here. Kiewit's leadership came out and said that they had to downsize because of the downturn in the market, and they had to they had a reduction in force due to market conditions. They didn't mention regulations, to market conditions. And so, my heart goes out to these 600 miners that lost their jobs. My heart goes out to these 6,000 oil and gas folks that lost their jobs. And we got to be realistic. It affects all of us. Okay. I mean, it affects everybody at the tire shops and the restaurants and the flower shops. But there's bigger questions. Why didn't these workers have a place to go? Why didn't they have other job opportunities to go? We've had 3 busts in 60 years. And we got to be honest. Obama was not the president for all of them. We've had 3 busts under presidents of both parties. More coal miners lost their job under Reagan than Obama. So, I mean, we've got to look at the market conditions, and we've got to look at where the market's headed. But coal, in order to advance coal has a place in electricity. It's not going anywhere. But it also has a bright future. I think the clean coal research and technology, NZ's doing a great job with this, but I think there needs to be more. The manufacturing side with carbon fiber, I think we need to pursue that to where all kinds of things are built out of carbon fiber these days. Tennis rackets and golf clubs, fuselages for airplanes, semi-truck bodies. It's all built out of carbon fiber. That's an added value product that we can bring to the state, or at least have those conversations. And then the byproducts of it, fly ash and waste ash. They use fly ash for asphalt, and waste ash they inject for golf balls. There's all kinds of things we can do with coal. We just need to take a look at our options and really pursue those efforts.
Several issues we want you to address, and just one at a time. Tell us where you're at with it and what your priorities are. First one's military spending and protecting F.E. Warren Air Force Base.
Yeah, military spending is, I believe the military should set its budget, not Congress. And those folks know what they need. They're the best in the world. And we should adequately fund F.E. Warren Air Force Base. And, the Pentagon, or Congress gave the Pentagon $3 billion more than it asked for last year. So it's, to me, the spending it shouldn't have been allocated. The military, I believe, should set their own budgets, and I would support that.
What do you think the future is for F.E. Warren?
I think it's a bright future. Absolutely, it's a great location. I think there's a lot of growth opportunities with F.E. Warren.
Can you talk to us about climate change, environmental threats, what needs to be done there, and the EPA overreach? There have been some charges of that recently in Wyoming. talk about those issues for us?
Yeah, climate change, here's an issue where even if you don't believe the science, even if you don't believe it, you've got to follow the market. 150 countries are investing in cleaner energy sources. And so, we've got to decide Wyoming if we're going to be a part of that, or if we're going to watch this travel down our interstates. Again, we have every energy source in Wyoming. We are so blessed. I mean, we've got coal and natural gas and oil and wind and solar, and the market is driving the reduction. So we've got to take a look at this. There's a thing called the RE100 pledge, and what this is it's a pledge by 58 of the world's largest companies. So you can find out information about it on re100.org. And these companies are like Walmart and Facebook, Google, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, Nike, Starbucks. And what they did is they took this pledge to convert their business to 100% renewable, most of them by 2020. Now, this is critical that our next congressman understands this, because we have in Wyoming 1/5 of 1% of the nation's population. So that means we don't drive demand for energy products. And with the market going towards cleaner energy, these guys are driving that demand. And we in Wyoming are helping this effort. If we buy Starbucks, if we're on Facebook, if we're shopping at Walmart, we're helping this transition to renewable energy. Most of these businesses want it done by 2020. Today, Walmart has 37% of its business is operating on renewable. San Diego has pledged to be the first major city on renewable. So we need to understand this as Wyoming, because, we've got to, if we have an opportunity right now in Wyoming to be the nation's battery, but we have to sell the market what it's buying. Because if we don't, we're going to be out of the market. And one more point to add to that. I'm sorry, but I find it, these candidates are on Facebook talking about how they don't support renewable, and it's a renewable platform. So I would challenge the other candidates in the race that if you don't support all of Wyoming's energy, then stay off Facebook, because you're not putting your money where your mouth is. Yeah.
Where do you stand on the issue of man-made climate change?
I do believe we have a role in that. Yeah, I do.
And the EPA overreach?
That's, politicians seem to beat up on the EPA, and, certainly they've had some overreach. There's no doubt about it. The regulations, and I'm not a fan of these coal regulations, just for the record. I'm not a fan of them, but they have had some regulations that, are damaging to different areas. And but some regulations are not bad. Regulations that make cooks wash their hands after using the restroom. So there's a need for certain regulations and stuff. But what I would support is a better effort in that we take a look at these regulations, and the ones that are not serving us well or are outdated are eliminated. And so, but to just say that we're going to, cut an entire federal agency is a myth. It's a fairy tale. It's not going to happen. And we've got to keep in mind that the EPA is not just protecting the environment; it's protecting the people as well.
Where are you at with Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and healthcare coverage? Do you support continuing what the ACA has done, or do you see reforms needed?
Yeah, I believe the Affordable Care Act is 6 years old. And for 6 long years, all we've heard is repeal and replace, repeal and replace. And I believe yesterday was the first day that the GOP rolled out a replacement plan, which I would be open to looking at. Even Democrats are going to tell you that the ACA is not perfect. It's far, far, far from perfect. But it is America's healthcare system, and we need to improve the system. And there's things that we can do to improve the system. I believe transparency in the cost. If at hospitals, things like a Dixie cup costing $25 and a Kleenex at $15. I mean, if these things were priced out on a rate catalog, that itself would push down cost. There are prescription drugs. We pay 4 or 5 times as much for name brand prescription drugs as any other country on earth. And so these are things we need to work on, and we can fix it. But I believe we need to have those discussions in Congress, because voting 62 times to overturn the Affordable Care Act is a waste of time and money. And what I find most, I guess, most disheartening about the whole thing is that, when we look to Congress and we say, why don't we have a balanced budget, or why has it been 12 years since we balanced the budget? They say we don't have time, but we have time to make symbolic votes, 62 of them, on the Affordable Care Act. And I think this is a big problem with Congress, is we send people out there that want to make a point rather than progress.
You've already talked, Ryan, about reducing the federal debt. Can you talk about a little more specifically about how you would go about doing that, and balancing the budget and reducing the deficit?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing, the way to do this, I believe, is we have to eliminate tax expenditures. This is, it accounts for $1.5 trillion that's added to our national debt every year without any way to offset this cost. So if we're going to reduce the debt, we've got to quit adding to it. And, giving it a $1.5 trillion gift to the corporations and the top wealthy is where we need to start. That's going to, it's going to help with our taxes. These are things like tax incentives and loopholes that we do for corporations. And we need to fix this. And that, I believe that's the first step.
Can you talk to us about education reforms, things that have happened? We've moved away from No Child Left Behind and replaced that. How do you feel about the replacement? What more needs to be done?
Yeah, I think that's a great. I was all for that. I thought it was. I think it's great that we went away from that, and the state control, putting it more in the state and local hands. I'm all for that. My wife's a teacher, and so I see the challenges that they have when they're put into this system that they have to try and make work. So I think that we need to set the standards and kind of outline what those expectations are, and let the professionals be professionals. These men and women are they are professionals, and we need to return teaching to its professional status. And so I think putting a lot more on the local control is I believe our best move that we can do. And education's our best investment that we can do. I think it needs to be properly funded. Even when times were good here in Wyoming, even when our energy revenues were way up, we were asking teachers and kids to bring red pens and markers and Sharpies and Kleenex to school. And so now with we just cut $35 million out of the budget, we're going to ask kids to bring their own desks. I mean, I'm joking, but there's major cuts, and we need to look at this. So we need to properly fund the education system.
Can you talk to us about endangered species, the ESA, and whether any changes need to be made to that?
Yeah, that is. In fact, I just read an article the other day that they are looking to it. The Western Governors Association is putting together a proposal to kind of revamp the program, and it was a 7-step program, and it had a lot of I believe really good things in there. It talked about more of a state involvement, state partnership, management proposal, and then it had a where we would provide incentives to these ranchers and farmers for helping with this effort, and I think that's key. Because right now we have a kind of a unwritten, see, shoot, shovel, shut up type of a program, and it's because of the burden that they go through. So we need to free that up. We need to provide incentives towards these ranchers and farmers to help us with this effort. And the other thing it had that I really liked was, proposing guidelines. What are the requirements for getting on and getting off the list? And I think that's great, is we kind of frame it to where everybody understands the program. So those are the improvements that I read that I think were desperately needed, to improve it.
For Cheyenne, one of the big issues is our airport, and the traffic's been declining. So what would your proposals be for funding small airports, and how important is air service to Wyoming?
Yeah, it's air service is it's extremely important, and Wyoming's one of those states it's hard to get in and out of. I live in Rock Springs. There's no easy way to get in and out of. And we used to have a flight to Salt Lake, and they cut that. So now the only flights out of the Rock Springs airport is to Denver for a connection. And so it's extremely difficult to make things work without driving a significant difference. And I'm not familiar with Cheyenne in terms of how many flights come in and out a day, but small airports, I think we should fund them properly. It would bring tourism's huge here in Wyoming. And if we made it easier for people to come in and out of our state, we would have more people come in and out of our state. So yeah, I think we need to definitely take a look at that.
Your thoughts on replacing the abandoned mine land funds that have been coming into the state and are now being cut?
Yeah, well, replacing them. Tell me a little bit more about we received 258 million, right? Is that what you're talking?
That's about right. Yes, and there's been talk, and we've gone back and forth with those funds going away, and then they lobby and they come back. But as the industry changes, do you have ideas for how that money should be replaced? Should Congress fund the states and the states that are energy producing like Wyoming in a different way?
Oh, absolutely. And I think Wyoming should be have a huge say in that when we're the nation's largest producer of coal. So yeah, I think we should definitely have a say in that. And then, our congressional delegates did a good job by getting those funds back to Wyoming. So yeah, that effort needs to continue in Congress.
And so you fight against any more changes to
Yeah.
that?
Yep.
Okay. The only other question on a list of issues is, how do you feel about the presidential candidates, and especially your party's parent nominee?
Well, I'm like most people in Wyoming. These are definitely not the two candidates I would have picked. And so when we look at this race, it's, I'm not quite sure how we ended up here. But, I definitely can't support Trump. And I have my reservations about Clinton as well. So I think it's just going to be, it'll be a decision I'll have to make inside the voter's box. But the real, to understand it, I will work with whoever's in the White House, whether it be Trump or Clinton. I believe that the bigger problem is Congress. Congress is broken. The president, is obviously our commander-in-chief and leader, but, when Congress won't work with each other, we don't get anything done. So until we start working on fixing Congress, I don't believe it matters who's in the White House.
Ryan, what do you believe are the priorities for Wyoming's lone member of the U.S. House of Representatives, and how would you make sure that your voice is heard among 435 people?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think that you have to work with both sides of the aisle. That's absolutely key. We have to make sure that Wyoming's issues are put in the conversation, not the party platform. And I believe that we have to send a person back there that's willing to work with both parties, challenge their own party for the issues that matter to Wyoming. And, Wyoming is a small state, but we bring so much to the table. And so when we look at this, we got to keep in mind, though, voters need to understand that this position is a freshman congressman position. So everything that I am proposing is practical, realistic solutions to Wyoming's problems. We have a lot of, campaign talk about these huge promises, rolling back the ACA and, cutting the EPA and the IRS and, Department of Education and BLM and, all these kinds of just crazy promises. And there's several problems with that. And we need to be honest with the voters, because a lot of these candidates that are running for this position are running and making promises that they can do things that our current delegates with 35 years of federal service can't be done. So either they're, peddling and some of this talk, or they're, insinuating that our delegates aren't doing their jobs. So we have to be real in what we can and can't get done. We have to be practical in moving forward, in the sense that, you're not in the field. We call it a green hat, new to the job, right? This is what we call it. It's the new guy there. which means you're new to the job. You've got to understand the process. And but the reality is, you don't get keys to the gas plant to go start turning valves. And it's the same way with Congress. You don't walk in as a freshman and start, writing laws and gutting federal agencies. So, that would be one thing to the voters that I would like to say is, ask these candidates how they're going to do this stuff, because it sounds great. We've heard it for 40 years. It sounds great, but the reality is working with Congress and being heard is not an effort of going in there and pointing fingers and using the same rhetoric. It's cooperation. It's conversation, it's debate, it's discussion. These are the things that are missing from Congress.
Do you have anything else? Ryan, want to give you a chance to share anything else you'd like to share with us that we haven't talked about so far today?
Yeah, great. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you guys for allowing me to be here. It's always great to get a message out to the voters. That's important. I believe there's a lot of voters that just vote party line, straight down the ticket. And I understand there's a lot of frustration out there with both sides of the aisle. And I believe that this idea that you're in this camp or this camp, and we blame everything on those camps is where we need to start. We have candidates that are way to the right and one that's way to the left, and I'm in the middle. I'm a Wyoming Democrat, so that means I support Wyoming's energy industries. I support the Second Amendment. So these are core issues that Wyoming needs, and it's been 40 years since we sent a Democrat to DC, and I think that we can't paint all Democrats with the same brush. And in Wyoming, I think unfairly sometimes we get to that. It's kind of like saying that all Democrats, represent those of DC would be like saying all Republicans are like Donald Trump. And it's an unfair assessment. I'm the one Democrat that is a friend of the energy industry. I work in it. And I'm a Second Amendment I will absolutely support. So Republicans can feel confident voting for a Democrat in 2016.
Ryan, thanks for being here.
Thank you.